You want to know about the fate of who?
The people who have never had the chance to hear the gospel.
Okay, so what do you think is going to happen to those who've never heard the gospel?
I think they go to hell
Why would you think they go to hell?
because who can atone for their sins?
So you think unless they know Jesus died for their sins, Jesus won't apply his saving benefits to them, who to no fault of their own did not know who he was?
Yeah, I would hope that that happens, but
Okay, so notice first you said, who's going to atone for their sins? Why do you assume that if someone lives in a place where he or she, to no fault of their own, never heard the clear presentation of the gospel, but sought to live a life to the God that they believed was there, that God in his love and compassion and mercy won't take their circumstances into consideration, and because of Jesus' death, apply the saving benefits of Christ to them, and then when they are brought into the presence of Christ, then they will know that the God they were seeking for mercy is Jesus, and in his love, he showed them mercy, even though they did not know who he was on earth.
yeah, I would
Do you
really
not do
hope that
that?
happens. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, my auntie isn't in hell then. Yeah.
Say it again.
Hopefully, my auntie isn't in hell.
If
Yeah.
your aunt did not know the real Jesus and did not had a clear presentation of the gospel given to her, God, who's infinitely merciful, compassionate, just and righteous and holy and loving, takes that into consideration. So that's part of the answer. Are you with me there?
Yes.
So
Yes.
let me repeat so people don't misunderstand. No one is saved apart from Jesus Christ. No one can be saved except by Jesus Christ. The real question is, since Jesus alone saves and he's offered his life for the salvation of the world, must someone know in this fallen world, in this life, who Jesus is in order to benefit from the death of Christ and receive his favor? Well, in the case of your aunt, who perhaps to no fault of her own, because I don't know, I'm just let's
She
saying
was a
she
Muslim.
never,
She was a
well, it
Muslim.
doesn't matter. You
Yeah.
have people who are Muslims who have no idea what the Bible is, no idea what true Christianity teaches, no idea what the Trinity is.
Yeah.
Okay? So, in light of that, can God look at her circumstances and say, this woman tried to live a morally upright life? All she knew was the God of Islam. She didn't know the true God because she never heard the clear presentation of the gospel and know the real Jesus. She was taught this perverted, corrupted version of Christianity. So it wasn't Jesus she rejected, but this false, distorted view of Jesus. And so I will take her situation into consideration and extend the saving benefits of Christ to her and bring her into my presence. And then she'll know it is the real Jesus who heard her cries and saved her. Can he do that?
I hope so, man. I really hope so. Yeah, man. Oh, man. That gives me that gives me comfort, man. Like you know.
And I'm not doing
Well,
it to comfort you. I'm just saying, can he do
yeah,
that?
no, it does, bro. Like, no, not just my aunt, just millions. Because I'm Iranian, right? Millions
Yes,
of people in Iran that they don't hear the gospel because
exactly.
that, yeah, because that's all there is Islam. That's all there is there. I know
Yes, so
there's
that's what
some
I'm saying.
Christian.
God takes that into consideration of circumstances. But secondly, now we're going to make it a little more complicated. God also, being all knowing, almighty, is fully aware whether an individual, if he or she had been presented the message of the gospel, would accept or reject. Because we are assuming that just because someone hears the clear presentation of the gospel, they will accept it. Well, if that's the case, how do you explain that when Jesus was on earth, so many hated him and rejected him and had him killed?
Yeah, because they were son of the devil.
You understand? It's a complicated question requiring a complicated answer because God knows all variables. God is infinitely wise. He knows the unknown, and he knows that if this person had received a clear presentation of the gospel, that person would reject or accept, because we're assuming your Muslim aunt, had she heard the clear presentation of the gospel, she would believe. No, that's not necessarily true, because Jesus, God in the flesh, walked the earth, and more people hated him than believed in him and had him killed. And there was no better communicator than Jesus. Jesus spoke perfectly, clearly, and he did miracles that no one else had done. And yet, being the perfect communicator, people still hated him and condemned him to die. Exactly, like Salvador says, Judas. So it's a much more complex, complicated response. And that's why you say what Abraham said. Since God is the judge of the whole world, he will do only that which is righteous and just. For example, go to Genesis 18.
Genesis 18.
And read 22 to 26. Right?
Yeah. All right, Genesis
Believe
18.
in the gospel. Hold on. Let's take this. Believe in the gospel. Finish it, though. Believe in the gospel. Finish it. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Finish his prayer. Luke 23:34. Because they did not know. And if you read the context clearly, don't misread it. Read it carefully. Luke 23:33, 34. It was talking about the soldiers who were crucifying him and dividing his garments among them. He said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. So go ahead.
Yeah. Verse 22, 26. Yeah. And the men turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous and the wicked?
You see what Abraham's praying? God had said to Abraham, I'm going to go down to Sodom to verify the reports of what they've said. If there's evil and wicked, as the reports claim they are, then I will know. So what did Abraham do? What did he say? Go ahead.
Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?
See, Abraham knew the character of God. He knew his God, that he's perfectly just, righteous, merciful, loving, compassionate. And what does he say? Say, are you going to destroy the righteous as well with the wicked? So you're going to treat the righteous like the wicked? Far be it from you. That's beneath you. You are the judge of the whole world. And as the judge of the world, you are perfectly just and righteous. And you would never treat the righteous as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall you not do what is right? Of course you will. And notice what God says in verse 26.
And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes.
Did you catch it? If I find 50 righteous, Abraham, I'll spare it. And then God promised Abraham, because Abraham got him to agree that if he found 10, he would spare it. So when he destroyed Sodom, what message did that send to Abraham?
There was basically no righteous person in
There
Sodom.
wasn't even 10 righteous.
Yeah.
So then Abraham knew, wow, Sodom is even more wicked than I thought. God couldn't even find 10 righteous for him to spare it.
Yeah.
So understand what you're learning about God. God knows the circumstances of every creature. He even knows the unseen. So in other words, God knows if this person was put in a situation where he or she heard the gospel clearly, they would still reject nonetheless. And on that basis, God would be just to punish them.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't know what God knows, but I trust. I know that God knows your aunt, that had she heard the gospel clearly, she would have found Jesus irresistible and fallen in love with him. But she was never given that opportunity. And on that basis, extend the saving benefits of Christ to her. So no one goes to heaven apart from Christ, but many will end up in heaven because of Jesus, even though they didn't know it's for Jesus' sake they enter heaven, because on earth they didn't know who he was and were not given a clear presentation of the gospel. So don't be surprised when you get to heaven. You're going to see people from all religious backgrounds who the Lord knew if these individuals had been given the clear message of the gospel, they would have turned to my son. So they did the best they could with the revelation given to them. And on that basis, the death of my son covers them.
Yeah, that seems righteous, just, yeah.
Does it answer your question?
Yes, it does answer my question. Yeah.
Well, let the Lord deal with your aunt. She's in God's hands. She's God's creature. God owns her and created her for his pleasure. Trust that her judge is just, righteous, compassionate, loving, and merciful. And leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, leave it at God will do anything, better than us. Yeah.
You know what Jesus said to Peter when Peter said, Lord, what about him? Because Peter was told that in your old age, you'll be taken to where you do not want to go, and they will stretch out your hands, signifying the kind of death he would die. Then Peter looked at John. He said, what about him? He goes, what's it to you? Why are you worried about him? If I want him to remain alive until I return, that's my business. You worry about yourself. So in other words, Jesus' message is, why are you worried about the dead? They're dead. They're in my hands. Trust me that I'm righteous and I will know how to deal with them accordingly. You worry about yourself. You worry about the revelation you have, because the more you know, the greater your judgment and responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't worry about the dead. Let God worry about them. You worry about yourself. The more you know, the more accountable you'll become. The less you know, the more mercy you shall be shown. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
Of course. The more someone knows God's will, the greater the judgment and the greater the accountability. Here, let me show it to you. Go to Luke 12, 47, 48.
Luke 12, 47, 48.
So you and I, we're going to be judged more harshly. So young men, learn everything that I've written and watch all my videos, because I want your judgment to be just as bad as mine.
Yeah. And that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes.
Did you catch it, Luke 12, 47? Read it again. And that servant who knew his master's will,
and prepared not himself, but neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes.
Did you catch it? The more you know your master's will, but don't do it, but you're doing your own will, your punishment will be severe. You'll be beaten with many blows.
Yeah, so you'll be judged more harshly if you know more, right?
Yep.
And you don't do according
to it. You didn't finish it. You're getting too excited. Go to 40, 48.
But he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes.
Did you catch it?
Yeah, he that knew not.
That servant who did not know his master's will, but still did things blameworthy, will be beaten with fewer blows.
For unto whomsoever much is given of him shall be required.
Did you catch it? The servant who did not know his master's will, but still did something blameworthy, his beating will be less severe. For to whom much is given, much will be required, right?
Yeah.
Now watch what Peter says about those who heard the gospel of Christ, repented for a season, lived for Christ, only to turn back, following false teaching, and then engaging in immorality. After hearing the gospel and confessing and repenting, then they turn away. Look what he says about them. Go to 2 Peter 2, 20 to 22. 2 Peter 2, 20 to 22.
All right. 2 Peter, okay. Okay, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge
notice,
of the...
slowly, you're reading too fast, you're not going to understand. And if Elizabethan English is hard, then read some that's easier. It says, if they, after escaping, these individuals, they escape what?
The pollutions of the world.
Okay, keep on.
Through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Pause. He's talking about individuals who escaped the gross immorality, moral corruption of the world, because they heard the gospel, confessed Jesus, turned away, and started living for Jesus. These individuals then turned back and went back into the world. What it says.
They are again entangled therein and overcome. The latter end is worse with them than the beginning.
Well, say what?
The latter end is worse with them than the beginning.
They are now worse off and their judgment will be worse off than before they came to faith.
Yeah.
But then wait, look what it says. Better had they not. Look what it says. It would have been better for them what?
For them to have known, for to not
Read it
to
from the
not,
beginning.
yeah. For it had been better for them not to have known the way of the righteous, than after they had known it to turn from the holy commandment delivered
Did you
unto
catch it?
them. Yeah.
It would have been better for them that they had never heard the gospel and then confessed faith in Christ. It would have been better and easier for them on the day of judgment had they remained ignorant of the gospel. What does that say about your aunt who was ignorant of the gospel?
It would be better for her, better for them to
So she's better off now, right?
yeah.
Did you catch
Uh,
it?
Yeah.
Read 2 Peter 2:21 again and then finish it at 22.
For it had been better for them not to have known the way of the righteous, than after they have known it, to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them. But it has happened unto them according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed to a wallowing in the mire.
Yeah, DH3, it doesn't matter whether they say they were never truly Christians. The point still stands, DH3. I know the Calvinist argument that because they confessed faith and heard the gospel, they will now be judged more severely whether they were truly saved or not. That misses the point. The point is, the more you know, the greater your judgment. That's the point, DH3. I don't care how a Calvinist wants to interpret it. So even these people whom the Calvinists say were never elect, okay, but the point still remains because they heard the gospel, professed faith in the gospel, walked for a season in holiness and obedience, turned away to immorality and false teaching, they now are worse off than they were at the beginning, at the start. Now, let's apply it to your end. According to Peter, it was better off for these perverts not to have heard the gospel. Their situation would have been better off, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't that apply to, let's say, that Muslim grandmother who's been living in a Muslim land, isolated from the world, from technology, married off at the age of 9 to abusive husband, has 10 kids, beaten, mistreated, lived a miserable existence, and she only knows Allah and cries out to Allah for mercy, has never heard the gospel, and then she dies in that state. Do you not think that God, who saw the misery, will extend the saving benefits and mercy of Jesus to her and then bring her into the everlasting rest of the Lord Jesus? And there she will realize the God that she cried to was Jesus. Isn't she better off than had she heard the gospel and rejected it, if we go with what Peter just said?
Yeah, then to turn from the holy commandment. Yeah.
You see the point?
I see the point.
So
Yeah.
the issue of the saved, of the unreached, is a complicated, it is a complex issue. It's not a simple yes or no, like some of these Bible perverts make it out to be, like James White, John MacArthur, Anthony Rod, these Calvinist Bible perverts who make it sound so easy in the way they explain the fate of the unreached. No, it's much more complex, because God takes in all the variables and knows what we do not know and knows whether they will respond to the gospel if they heard it or not. It's too complex.